Hello and welcome back to the Gentleman Psychic. I am your host, your MC, your master of ceremonies, your storyteller, your narrator for the evening. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard. Anyway, I whisper that because we're so close to the beginning that I'm afraid that swears might get me in trouble with the YouTube algorithms. Anyway, I know we've got just a few minutes, so if you have not yet, go pick your poison. Tonight's poison is arsenic. Bring your princess, bring your buddy, bring your toy, bring your dog, bring your cat, bring someone to cuddle with, bring a fan, bring a blanket, whatever. If you may be watching it in the future, it is awfully hot here. Hello, Mary Jane, lovely to see you this evening. I had to turn around and look at you here because I have a napkin over this light, and it is difficult for me to read the text, so I have to look that way. Anyway, welcome to tonight's rendition of The Devil's Mansion. It was made into a film. Hello. Good evening, Kelly. Good evening. Welcome, one and all. Anton, as a Christian, I really do enjoy your content. You've really opened my eyes. Thank you, Anton. I appreciate that. Of course, though, we are not really talking about anything theological at this point. We are actually going to do what I love is story time. It helps to promote literacy. It also helps people to sleep when they cannot. It helps people to feel less alone in a world of loneliness. I know it does for me. It makes me feel much better knowing that you are here. And I love this book. It's a classic book, 1931 or 32. I can't remember. I guess I could look, but 1931 or 32. And we have gotten all the way down. We're about a quarter of the way through. So just a quick recap as to what has happened. The protagonist was driving on a road in his little sports car, and he found himself stuck in the rain and in the ditch, and then walked through the wood to find a house that was inhabited by an elderly woman, her maidservant, and a vicious dog. So she chases him out of the house, and then he ends up by walking in the rain all the way down to the village. And the next morning, he rides with, this is the clock, just a moment. We have to listen to the clock, you know. So anyway, we are. He goes back to the village, and then this gentleman brings him back up the next day to pick up his car, and they pick up from the train this lovely young woman who is now going to be employed by this elderly woman. As it turns out, there's someone else in the house. The elderly woman has passed away, and they have been told, yes, she has a son. He intends to marry you. So that, my dears, is where we are now. Let's see what we have here. Chapter 19. Janet stirred uneasily in her sleep. She had been dreaming, and her dream was none too pleasant. The face in the crystal, she had seen it again in her dream, the green eyes leering at her, and the shock of red hair. It was close to her, so close she could touch it. The eyes were getting greener and greener, until all she could see were the green eyes and the red hair. No face. She was wide awake now, frightened by the dream. The room was very dark. Nita's room, she remembered, the room off the kitchen. and Nita was beside her on the floor, sleeping, sinking back again on her hard pillow. She felt relieved. Nita was beside her. To have the woman's hand in hers would be much more comforting. She was afraid to awaken her, however, so she lay still for a while. The room was quiet. Straining her eyes, she made out the closed door ahead of her and the small chest of drawers in the corner. Nita beside her. Poor Nita, she was so tired, so worn out from the day of labor. The grave, and Janet shuddered and tried to force her thoughts from Miss Bosvain. Leaning over the cot, she looked down on the floor. The quilt was there, but in the darkness, she could not tell whether she would feel the quilt to make sure. Her hand groped about. Nita was not there. Only the quilt lay on the floor, rumpled where Nita had lain on it. In an instant, Janet was sitting up, terror in her face, and an unmuttered cry on her lips. How many hours had she slept? When had Nita gone? Where was she? Creeping over to the chest of drawers, she seized the old alarm clock on the top and took it to the window. She could not see it there, so went back to the chest and found a match. Finally, in a little glow it made, she saw the hands pointing to 11 o'clock. It had been 9 o'clock when they both went to bed, still in her stocking feet, for she had not completely undressed for bed. Janet opened the door into the kitchen and peered out, whispering as softly as she could, "Nita." There was no answer, and she dared not call louder. Should she stay in the bedroom and wait? Perhaps she would be hours coming back. She had said nothing at all when they went to bed about leaving. In fact, Janet imagined Nita wanted her with her all the time. Stealthily, she made her way into the kitchen and sat down on a chair. The clock, which had been carried with her unconsciously, was on the table in front of her, ticking loudly. In the silence, it seemed to be screaming at her, taunting and frightening her still more. She waited, tense and rigid. A long sigh. Then another. Someone was near. "Nita!" she breathed so softly she hardly heard herself. Another sigh. The door into the hall must be slightly open, for the sigh came from there. "Janet!" a voice called, a man's voice. The girl stiffened and kept silent. Was it Blair Rodman? She could not tell. She had not heard his voice enough to tell, but it did not sound like she remembered it. Again came the soft call, "Janet." It was not Blair's voice. She was now sure of this, and it had come from behind the hall door. Who are you?" she murmured, half to herself, half aloud. "It is I." "Who loves you, Janet?" "Go away, you frighten me." She sobbed audibly from fear. "I don't mean to frighten you, dear Janet. You don't know me. You have never seen me, and you never will. But I love you, and I want you." "Go away." She spoke louder now. The voice she heard was soft, caressing, a deep, masculine voice, every syllable spoken musically. "Janet, I'm lonely. I've been lonely for years. When I first saw you, I loved you." "Let me go away from here if you love me." "I can't. Not now. But if I promise to be very good to you, to give you everything you want, will you stay with me willingly?" "No." "Janet, we'll leave this house. I know you hate it. We'll go away, abroad, any place. I'll buy a palace, a yacht, an island, anything you want. I have plenty of money." "No." "Janet, if you will stay with me willingly, I'll let Rodman go. I will, I promise you. Nita, too, shall go her own way. I promise. And as I seldom really promise anything, I always keep my word when I do." Otherwise, Janet held her breath as she waited for the answer. Otherwise, it came slowly, deliberately. Otherwise, Rodman will be out of this world by dawn, and you will stay here regardless with Nita and me. But you can't. I can, and I will. The decision is in your hands. You can't get into Mr. Rodman. I saw him. He is safe there, locked inside the stable. I have means, Janet, and I will use them. I've let him stay there without harming him, even though I hate him. Because of this, that I wanted to ask you. Where is Nita? Nita obeys my will. She's outside, walking in her sleep in the woods. She's forgotten you, and even the woman who was her mistress. Her mind is like dough when I wish it to be. There is a girl in the tower. She'll go if you wish. I can't give you my answer now. It has been all too sudden. I'll wait here. I wish to talk to Nita about it. Nita will not come back until I call her. After your answer. Janet clasped her hands across her knees. Her body was rocking back and forth in her chair. What she answered did not matter. It would be the same either way. But if she stayed willingly, Blair could go. There would be no more danger for him. The girl was surprised how much this man she scarcely knew had been in her thoughts lately. She had met him but a few days ago, and yet his life seemed somehow woven into hers. She saw him again, sitting in the stable window, pale, with bandage around his head. He had come up to help her. She knew that now. Sitting next to her in the truck, his hands over his knees, his suit wrinkled, his face fanned and healthy, his eyes were smiling merrily at her. Then his visit to the home, the hint of worry, the serious cast to his face, the joy that crept into his eyes when she had glimpsed her from when he had glimpsed her from the window, from the stable window. She knew so little about him, so very little. Nothing except that she had been kind and interested in her, that he had been kind and interested in her. Interested to the point of coming to see her at Miss Bosevane's, braving Raja, snarling and fangs. Young, too, he was. It was not fair that he should die for her. But would this man, who must be Maurice, really kill him? It seemed incredible to Janet that he could do such a thing. Nita, if she could only ask Nita what she could do. Maurice had said that Nita might go too. And the girl in the tower, if only she would stay with him willingly. Otherwise, Nita would stay here, dominated by this man who was a fiend. Nita, who hated him and longed to be free of him. Thoughts of Nita faded when Blair came again to her mind. It was the least she could do for him. Then he might go away in peace, and she would never see him again. Tears came suddenly to her eyes when she thought of this. Never see him any more? Ridiculous that she loved him when she had known him so short a time. Ridiculous. Surely love could not come so quickly. Janet had had little experience with love. The years she had spent with her father had brought no love to her. She had no time for love. And the years after were busy years. Men in her office, yes, plenty of them. Men who seemed attracted to her but were frightened by her seriousness, by the duty she had put forward for herself. Janet had not yet learned how to play. How will I know that you will keep your promise? The question came slowly, hesitantly, thoughts spoken aloud. The answer came readily. I'll direct Rodman to his car and let him go. After he goes, we'll go. I've already arranged to have a car come for us from Vancouver. It will be here around midnight. Nita may stay in this house. I'll provide for her. She may have the house if she wants it. We'll never return here. She'll take care of the lady in the East Tower room. In case you do not believe I have a car coming from Vancouver, I'll tell you what I have my own direct telephone line here, which is located some miles from the house. I receive no incoming calls. I must have more proof of your promise than that. A moment of silence, the voice continued. I'll let you give Rodman directions to the car, but I'll be near you to hear everything you say. His car is within the gate on the right-hand side of the road. It is concealed about 50 feet in, on a hidden road, a road that is marked by 2 tall trees at the entrance. It's easy to find. The car is in running order. Will you go now to the stable? You'd better take a light. And Raja? I'll whistle for Raja. He'll stay inside with me. Janet found some matches on the table and lighted a candle. Her hands were steady, and she was much calmer now. She had promised to stay willingly with this man she had never seen. Willingly. Nita had said he was not like other men. Willingly with this mad man who had talked to her just now. Holding the candle high above her head, she went out the back door and found herself in the garden. The white flowers on Miss Bosevane's grave were faintly visible in the moonlight. Quickly she went around the house and saw the big stable ahead of her. The snarl greeted her. Raja was still there, but he made no move toward her. Mr. Rodman, she called softly. Yes. Her bravery left her for an instant when she heard his voice. Eager and excited, she could not see him, but she made out something white high up, the bandage around his head. Miss Lord, Janet, I've been waiting for you to come. God, the hours have dragged. Your car, I found it is within the gate, just a little away on the right-hand side of the road, hidden in a road marked by 2 tall trees. Janet spoke softly. She was about to go on when she heard a shrill whistle behind her. The whistle, she knew, came from Raja's master. She looked back, but could see nothing. Then Raja bounded past her, round the house, and she heard the kitchen door open. Maurice was in the house, standing at some of the back windows. She was sure of it. You can go now. Raja won't bother you. He has gone in. The sliding of bolts, and Blair ran to her side. Is it safe for us, Janet? He panted. Safe for you, but I can't go. Not yet. Wait down in Bosevane for me. I'll manage to get there. I can't go without you. You must, otherwise I can't get away. I don't understand. Quickly, while Raja is in the house. It will be too late soon. He was near her, very near, looking down at her. Suddenly she swayed toward him, and the candle fell from her hands into the grass, and she was in his arms, dizzy with the thrill of them around her. Weak with the kisses that fell on her lips. Janet, Janet, my love. His lips were on hers, warm and soft. His arms were tightening around her. Between kisses he gave, he whispered words of love. Kiss me, Janet, I love you. She returned his kisses, forgetting Maurice, forgetting her promise, forgetting everything except that she was in Blair's arms. She was kissing him, and she loved him. You love me, Janet? Yes, she murmured, so low it might have been a sigh. With this, she struggled to get away. Maurice, the message she must give. You must go right away. It will be too late soon for you. I can't go without you, Janet. I can't. But I'm coming soon as Nita gets back. She's gone, and I can't leave without her. Don't you see? You must go. If you stay, I stay. Blair, you have only a little while. She thought of some lie he would believe. Raja will kill you if you stay. He does not bother me, but I must wait for Nita. She is in danger, too. Go away now and come back at daylight with your car for Nita and me, but do not come back before. I am safe enough. Don't worry. I don't understand this. Go now. We've lost too much time as it is. My sweet, please. I'm frightened for you. One more kiss, and he caught her in his arms again, Will you be safe? Yes, it's only you I'm thinking about. She saw him run around the corner of the house, heard the footsteps in the grass, heard them getting fainter and fainter as he ran. She stood there for some time, dazed and weary, unshed tears in her eyes. The candle was out, lying in the grass. When she finally had the strength to go into the house, she walked like a person drugged, drunk, staggering and stumbling. In the kitchen at last, a lighted candle was standing on the table. Weakly, she threw herself into the chair, bitter thoughts in her mind. She had sent Blair away and would never see him again. When he came back at daylight, she would be gone, gone with Maurice, unless the car was expected did not come. Something was sparkling in the candlelight, something bright. Vaguely and without thinking, she moved her hand toward it. A string of beads. She held it up, seeing it, yet not seeing it. The stones were clear and gleamed yellow, blue and green in the flickering light. She thought she had never seen such beautiful stones. They looked like diamonds, but she could not tell. They dropped with a tinkle on the table from her inert fingers. Footsteps coming in. She looked up. Nita, her eyes wide open, her lips tightly closed, walked past her as if she did not see her, walked straight for the bedroom. Nita, the girl called loudly. The woman did not stop. She evidently did not hear her. Janet saw her lie down on the pallet beside the cot. She had not seen Janet, although her eyes were open. She had not heard, though Janet had called. She was about to run to the cot when a voice stopped her. I have your suitcase here, outside the door. You will want a dress. We'll be leaving in a few minutes. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Chapter 20. Blair's thoughts were full of Janet as he ran along. She loved him. He forgot he was hungry and that his head throbbed with a dull, continuous ache. Janet loved him. And he was coming back for her at daylight. He did not quite understand why she could not come with him now, but she had insisted on staying and told him she was safe. All right. That only he was in danger. It seemed somewhat reasonable after her information that Miss Bosvane had died. Now and then he looked back, thinking he would see Raja bounding after him. The woods were very still, however, and only a little wind was stirring the firs, making a soft, sighing sound. He had dropped his iron bar when he had taken Janet in his arms, and now, if anything had happened, he would have no way of defending himself, for he had not stopped to retrieve the weapon. He was winded before he had gone far, but dared not stop to rest. Slowing his pace, he took the road more leisurely, his thoughts still on Janet and her pale face as she had looked up at him in the moonlight. Before he knew it, he was at the gate and had to retrace his steps to the side of the road where Janet had told him the car was standing. He found it easily, well hidden among the trees, absolutely invisible from the road. Still rather breathless from his run, he backed out the roadster and started on his way to Bosvane. Only a few dim lights told him he was there. Before doing anything else, he decided he should have a doctor look at his head. While the wound might only be a small one, still there was a danger of it being serious. It was not long before he had located a doctor and had awakened him. Blair gritted his teeth and bit his lips while the doctor washed the wound and then took 3 stitches in it. You've lost a lot of blood, man, he said as he worked quickly, rebandaging Blair's head. I know. You ought to stay in bed several days while this heals, or if you can't do that, be quiet. Can't, Blair answered non-committedly. I'd feel fine if I had something to eat, and there's not a restaurant open in Bosvane. The doctor, in his bathrobe and slippers, led him to the kitchen where he told Blair, help yourself. You are hungry, he exclaimed when he saw how eagerly his strange patient devoured a leg of chicken and 2 pieces of pie he had found in the icebox. Rather, I've only had part of a loaf of bread today, and some broth and a sandwich last night. When he finished, he sat thinking for a moment. Then he asked, "Where does McClure live? The man who keeps the garage." The doctor told him, whereupon Blair left after paying him more than liberally. McClure's house he found easily from the doctor's directions. It was on the main road, some few blocks from his garage. The man came sleepily to the door, after Blair had rung the bell for 10 minutes. "You?" He was wide awake when he recognized him, his guest. "Yes. Why are you so astonished? I thought you had left town with Miss Lord. Do come in." Blair walked into the front room and sat down. "What made you think I'd left town?" "Why, Smith, who keeps the hotel where you stayed, had a letter from you late this afternoon, saying that you had left Bosvane with Miss Lord. He was to forward your things to Vancouver. I didn't write it." "You didn't write it? I think he's already sent your things away. Thought it was kind of funny of you not to come and see me before you left, but then I thought maybe it was all right, you too, and that you had decided you had enough of this queer Bosvane business. What happened to your head?" "Somebody split it open at the house. Up there." Blair pointed up the road. I told you not to go up there. I'm going back in a little while, and you're going with me." "Not on your life, I'm not." "I got away all right. Miss Lord helped me, and I've got to get back there and help her. She wouldn't let me take her when I left, but she told me to come back at daylight. I might need help, so I want you." "Who bashed you in the head?" "I didn't see who it was." "Then you expect me to go up there?" "There's no danger. Now, Miss Lord said Miss Bosvane died during the day." "Died? My God! And that girl's up there in that house alone with only dumb Nita?" "McClure left the room and came back in a few minutes fully dressed." "She isn't up there alone, McClure," Blair said. "Someone else. A man, I think." "A man?" "Yes, no woman could have hit me like this. And besides, when it happened, Nita and Miss Bosvane and Janet, Miss Lord, that is, were all in the living room. I had stepped into another room when I was struck." "You must be mistaken." "But I'm not. I'm positive a man is in that house." "Well, let's be on our way. We'll have to stop for the undertaker." "Miss Lord didn't say anything about an undertaker." "What do you think we ought to do then?" "Go alone first." "All right. And say, McClure, have you got a gun?" "I have an empty revolver, nothing else." Without a word, McClure left the room again and returned with the two old shotguns. "We'll take your car. It's faster." At the garage, they stopped at Blair's suggestion, while McClure filled the roadster with gas and oil. "Battery isn't any too good," the mechanic said as Blair started the car. "Maybe we'd better change it." This took a few minutes longer. Finally, with Blair at the wheel, they started. McClure was holding the two shotguns between his knees, his face grim, his eyes on the road ahead. They were at the gate soon, and Blair slid out of his seat to open it. He remembered distinctly that he had left it open purposefully when he had driven away, to make his entrance back easier. "Somebody has closed this since I came out," he grumbled. He got back in the car. McClure said nothing. This errand was not to his liking, but if Miss Bosvane were dead, it was the least he could do. The car bounced over the bridge and went up to the narrow road to the house. Blair felt reassured when he saw a dim light creeping through the window blinds in the living room. Janet was waiting for him. It was not dawn yet, but he could not have waited until dawn. "Somebody's up," McClure offered, looking around for the dog. At the porch, Blair stopped the car and jumped out. "Better not go so gaily," the other man warned. "That dog." "You stay in the car with one gun cocked. If you see a hound, shoot, and shoot fast," Blair said over his shoulder. However, Raja was not in sight. The place seemed still and apparently deserted, except for the light in the living room. "I'll keep the motor running," McClure called. As he stepped on the starter, Blair walked swiftly to the door, which he had twice entered. He tapped softly on the wood, then waited for an answer. If Janet were in there, she would hasten to the door. No one came. So he rapped again, this time louder, impatient. He put his hand on the knob. It turned easily, and the door opened. Door's opened. I'm going in, he called to McClure, mumbling to himself. McClure, the two shotguns still in his hands, climbed out of the car and joined Blair. Damned funny. Maybe we'd better honk the horn instead of breaking in. No, we'll go in. There's a light. Blair pushed open the door wide and entered. McClure followed him. Two small candles on the table near the fireplace were lighted, shedding a yellow, sickly glow over the faded rug, and shivering slightly as they tried to penetrate the deep shadows of the big room. The two men stopped on the threshold and looked around. The room was empty. Blair missed the woman sitting by the fireplace, missed her though he had seen her but twice, and for a few minutes each time, undecided as to what to do, he walked aimlessly to the chair by the fire, half expecting each moment that the chair would be filled with the big form of the woman. A lonely woman. A lonely room with shadows large and gloomy. Where was Janet? McClure had nervously laid down his guns and was lighting a cigarette. Where's the girl? He asked, when he was puffing his cigarette successfully. The first two efforts to light had been failures. I don't know, Blair was whispering. He did not know why. What do you want? Both men wheeled sharply around and faced the woman who stood in the doorway. McClure uttered an astonished cry as he recognized her as Nita. She, who could not talk. Blair stepped politely. We want Miss Lord. She told me she would be ready to go with me when I came back. She's gone. Gone? I don't understand. She left over an hour ago. Where? For Bosvane. No, I don't know. I was sleeping when she left, and I found this note on her pillow. Nita handed over a piece of paper to Blair, who took it quickly to light it so that he could read it. Nita, when you read this, I shall be gone. I don't know where. Gone with Maurice. The car is waiting, he said. If I would go willingly, Blair Rodman could leave the house unharmed, and that you and the girl in the tower would be free. He has left money for you on the table. Raja he sent away into the woods. Pray for me, Nita, and tell Blair when he comes for me that I love him. Then scribbled hurriedly. At the end of the note was a postscript. Maurice has given me a string of diamonds. Blair fell into a chair, weak, discouraged. He tried to read the letter again, but his eyes saw only deigning letters that would not form words. She's gone, Nita repeated dispiritedly. Gone with him. Who is he, this Maurice? He is the devil. Miss Bosvane's son. I tried hard to keep awake tonight, but I was so tired, so exhausted. It has been so hard here alone, and so much to do today. I was going to keep awake and help Miss Lord. I only lay down because she wished me to, but before I knew it, I was asleep, and that was enough for him. He took the girl while I was sleeping, took her away. She was beside me on the cot, and when I awakened, she was gone, and this note was pinned to her pillow. Maurice made a bargain with her. God help her. Blair rose determinedly. She said she left in a car. Didn't you hear it come? No. I was sleeping, and when I am asleep, Maurice can do anything. He is the devil. He's hypnotized Janet into going with him. No, she's too strong, too strong for him, although he'll wear her down. I know. Until she is weak, like his mother became. And I, too. She's strong yet, but she went with him willingly. Tears were falling down Nita's homely cheeks, and she was sobbing pitifully. Who's the other girl Janet mentions in her note? I just took her into the kitchen, Nita trying to hold back the tears, led the way into the dark hall, and though the kitchen, where before a lone candle on the table, a girl was sitting. She looked up blankly when they entered. Nita immediately went to her and put a protecting arm on her shoulders. Hell, McClure exclaimed, nearly dropping his gun in excitement. It's the one I took up here 2 months ago. Blair thought he had never seen such a pitiful creature. although there was still a hint of prettiness about her features. Her eyes were large, and her lips drooped at the corners, pale lips, almost bloodless. Her slight figure was stooped. She was clad in an old blue dress, stained and wrinkled. Her brown hair falling in a tangled mass around her face and neck. She seemed like a madwoman. "We'll get her right away to the hospital," Blair announced. On the table in front of the girl was a heap of money, some silver, some gold, and some worn bills. "Maurice left it for me," Nita said listlessly. "Will you come to Beausvain with us?" McClure asked. The woman looked at them dully, then spoke in a hollow voice. "No, I'll stay here. With Maurice gone, it will be like heaven, as it was before he came." Blair picked up the fragile girl in his arms and bore her out to the car, McClure and Nita following. She had not uttered a word, although little moans, weak moans, came from her lips now and then. "Miss Beausvain is dead?" McClure asked. Nita nodded. "I buried her this afternoon myself." "Why?" Blair turned quickly to the servant, his burden still in his arms. "I dared not leave her to Maurice. He told me once he would raise her from the dead. I knew once I got her under the soil she loved, he could do nothing. She has been waiting to die for so long." "Where can we find this Maurice, and what is his other name?" "Maurice Beausvain. But you can't find him. He's too clever for you, Mr. Rodman. You will never see the girl again. I know that." "What does he look like?" Nita shuddered. "You'll know him when you see him. He's not like any of us." With a trembling girl between them, McClure and Blair started off. Blair silent over his wheel, and McClure glancing every once in a while at the girl at the side. Through the gate they sped, and when Blair felt the girl shaking, and he slowed down a little. "Better take her right to the hospital, hadn't we?" "None in Beausvain. We'll have to go to Winston." "What was that, Mr. Rodman?" Nothing. I saw something shining in the road as I turned. There it is again." Blair did not stop the car until they went 30 miles to Winston. Here they found a hospital and left the girl. On the way back to Beausvain, the two were silent. Blair drove very fast to make up time they had lost going to Winston. It was dawn now, and the eastern sky was tinged with red, a red that melted gently into the gray heavens. The sun was not long coming up. "We'll go back to the house and trace the car out, shall we?" McClure suggested. "That's the best it seems to me. We've lost a lot of time, and we wouldn't do anything else with that sick girl on our hands. There it is again, back up." Cursing a little under his breath, Blair backed up, and McClure jumped out of the car. He came back in a few minutes, holding a sparkling clear stone in his hand. "I saw something glint in the road. You know, when we left the gate. Then the other near Beausvain, and now this one, this road. Looks like glass to me. A phony diamond or a crystal." Blair took the stone, which was a little smaller than a dime, and pierced through like a bead. "My God, it looks like a diamond. And a mighty big one, too. Who's been strewing diamonds along the road? Let's go back and get the others." McClure's eyes brightened. Blair looked at him quizzically. "Do you suppose," he asked, "that Janet could have dropped these purposely so that we could tell where she was going? Nobody's going to drop diamonds. She'd tear up bits of paper. Maybe she didn't have any paper. We'll go back and see how many we can find. She said in her note that Maurice had given her a string of diamonds." Blair examined the stone more carefully. He noticed the gold shield where the gem had pierced proteet it from a chain of some sort on which it had been strung. A thorough search back over the road to the Beausvain mansion revealed 3 stones, all like the first one they had found. When they reached the house, they found Nita sitting at the porch, her head cupped in her hands. Blair leaped from the car, the stones in his hands. Have you seen these before, Anita? The woman looked them closely, then looked away. Diamonds. They were Ms. Morelia's mother's. Maurice took them from Morelia years ago, when they were abroad. Her father let Miss Morelia have them when she was 16. I remember the day he gave them to her. It seems just like yesterday. Now that Maurice is gone. Is it possible that Maurice gave them this string to Janet when she went away with him? I think this is the only diamond necklace he had. Did this Maurice live in the house? No, in the summer house in the garden, although he was seldom there. Will you take us there? There may be some clue he left, something that would hint to us where he had took Janet. Nita arose and warily stumbled through the overgrown shrubs. She seemed an old woman now. There was none of her erect, straight carriage left. Miss Bosvain's death had seemed to have taken her last interest from life. The sun was shining brightly when they looked in the door of the summer house. A low couch, hung with heavy piled rugs, was in one corner. Near it was a chest and a low table, both empty. On the floor were several faded rich rugs. Nita went to the chest, a curious thing, large with great bronze hinges and a bronze lock. He kept his money here, but he's taken it all with him. Where did he keep his diamonds? In the chest, too. All his valuables were there. We'd better get along, Blair said, turning to McClure. I'm sure now that Janet dropped the diamonds. By the way, Nita, were they strung the last time you saw them? And how many were there on the string? There were 24 of them on the thin gold chain. The men hurried to the car and drove off, rushing through Bosvain and onto the road to Winston. At a turn in the road, landing in Winston, they found another stone. This made 4. There were 20 more to find, but strangely, no one in Winston had seen the mystery car in which Janet and her captor had passed through the town. Blair, frantic with fear for the girl, calmed sufficiently to map out a thorough campaign, and dividing the town in half, personally knocked on every door, while McClure did the same at the other houses and asked for information, but all traces of the car was gone. No one had seen it. Chapter 21. 3 days. Chapter 21. 3 days went by, 3 days of worry and anguish for Blair, days of fruitless searching, 3 days during which each day a short advertisement appeared in every paper of Western Canada. Lost, large diamonds from necklace stone, pierced for chain, very liberal reward, address B.R. Bosvain Hotel, Bosvain, B.C. Days when Blair arose at dawn and went out on useless, hopeless clues, nights when there was no sleep for him. He had conceived the idea for the advertisement because he felt in this way he might trace the car which had taken Janet away. Surely, if she would drop 4 diamonds, she would not keep the rest, unless something had interfered with her plan to leave a glittering trail for him. Every morning, he eagerly looked for mail in his box at the hotel. Letters forward from New York were there, but none addressed to B.R. He used his car constantly, exploring all the roads, stopping at every little garage and restaurant to ask whether a girl of Janet's description had been there. Once he made a fast trip to Vancouver, thinking he might pick up some slender clue on the way. It was a wild goose chase, however, and he came back more disappointed, more downhearted than ever. Myrtle Harris, the girl he had taken to the Winston Hospital, was much improved when he went to see her. She had recovered from her fright and was sitting in a big chair, half smile lighting her face. Blair greeted her kindly and then asked if she had felt able to yet tell what she had seen in the house. No, she wasn't afraid anymore. But as long as she lived, she would never return to Bosvain. Had she ever seen Maurice Bosvain? Was that his name? I didn't know. I only knew there was somebody, some man. I came to the house about noon, and there was something about it that frightened me as soon as I walked in the door. Miss Bosvane, Anita, and that terrible dog. I'm nervous anyway, and I started to cry, and I wanted to go home. Then I heard that awful laugh. It seemed just outside the room, a man's laugh, and Miss Bosvane had told me she was alone with her one servant. All that afternoon I heard laughter. It would stop for a while and then start again until I was a nervous wreck. Miss Bosvane seemed to take no notice of it and told me when I asked her who was laughing that I must be dreaming. Finally, night came, and Nita took me upstairs to the third floor. My room, I discovered afterwards, was in a tower, very small. I never came out of it until the day you came. I would look out of the window for hours at a time, thinking I was going mad. It was so terrible being alone, having no one to talk with. Nita brought me food once a day. I used to beg her to let me go so I wouldn't have to hear that laughter every night outside my door. But she was dumb and pretended not to hear me. Then after I had been there some time, I saw a girl out in front of the house one day. I waved to her. I think she saw me, but I don't know. She looked surprised. I beckoned her to come and tried to call, but I could never open the window. It was locked, and the glass was too heavy to break. She stopped, and a look of fear passed over her face. Then you never saw the man who laughed? No, but at night he would stand outside the door. There was a flight of steps up to the tower room, and the door at the bottom and the top, both locked, and laugh, a low, ringing, blood-curdling laugh. Who he was, I do not know. I got to thinking after a while that I was just imagining the laugh. You answered an advert for a job. Yes, in a Vancouver paper. I thought the place sounded good, and that if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have to stay. Unable to get any sort of description of the man who had taken Janet away, Blair returned to Nita. But she refused to talk about Maurice when he pressed her with questions regarding the man's appearance, and she pretended she did not understand. He continued until last night, half angrily, she cried. Ms. Morelia made me promise I'd never tell anyone that you will know him when you see him. But Nita, Blair argued, how am I going to find him if I don't know what he looks like? Janet, doubtless, will be well hidden, and I will have to trace her through him. Maurice will be concealed even more carefully than Janet Lord. Very few people have ever seen him. I am one of the few. Ms. Morelia said that even as a young boy, he was sensitive about his appearance and always stayed hidden from people. It is likely that if he really loves Janet, she will never see him. Never. He will come to her only in the dark, for he has the eyes of a cat. He sees more clearly in the darkness than in the light. He showed himself to you, and to his mother. Yes, but he hated his mother, and he hated me because he was forced to let me look upon him. No, you can't trace Janet through him. I can't understand how Maurice could take Janet away and suddenly as he did. I was with her a few hours before, and I never would have left her if I would have suspected that there was a man who had some sort of hold on her. But she begged me to go, told me it was dangerous for me to stay, that she was safe. Maurice forced her to say that, I know. Safe for her, but not for you. The morning of the 5th day, a letter in Blair's box in the hotel gave him renewed hope of finding the lost girl. Seizing it eagerly, he tore open the envelope and read the contents. B.R. Regarding the diamond you lost. My small son found one yesterday in the docks of Vancouver. You may have same by calling at my office in Rhodes Building and making the proper identification. Yours truly, Samuel Vorman. Blair did not wait for breakfast, did not wait to shave, but jumped into his car and started for Vancouver. By fast driving, he could make the distance in such time, less time than by bus or by train, At noon, when he stopped for gas, he had sandwiches put on his lunch and drove steadily on. It was 8 o'clock when he reached Vancouver, dusty and tired from fighting his way over the rough roads. After a hasty dinner, he found Samuel Vrooman's home address, but no one at home. Disappointed, he returned to the Vancouver hotel for a much-needed rest. He was waiting at the door of Vrooman's office when the first clerk put in his appearance. Vrooman, from his sign in the door, was a commission merchant. Then, more waiting. Vrooman, the clerk said, did not usually come down until about 9:30. Blair wondered how the single diamond could have been dropped so far from Winston and Beausvein, where he and McClure had found the 4 others. Did it mean that Janet and Maurice were in Vancouver, that they were planning to sail? Strange that Janet would be about the docks unless she was taking a boat somewhere. Perhaps their boat had sailed. Perhaps they were now far out at sea. A feeling of apprehension swept over him at this thought. He glanced at the letter again. It had been written 2 days ago. It might be Vrooman had had the diamond for several days before he noticed the advertisement in the paper. 2, it might not be the mate to the diamonds he had in his possession, and this trip would again prove but a waste of time. All that time, Maurice and Janet were getting further and further away. The arrival of Vrooman, a short, pompous little man, interrupted Blair's gloomy thoughts and followed the commission merchant into his office. I'm Blair Rodman, the BR of the advertisement, he introduced himself. Vrooman shrugged his shoulders and raised his eyebrows. Oh, yes, he said smoothly. I had the diamond, my boy. My boy Sam found appraised yesterday by a jeweler. He says it's extremely valuable. The stone is 2 carats and worth about $10,000. Blair tried not to let the amazement he felt show in his face. $10,000. Anita had said there were 24 diamonds in the necklace. Maurice had given Janet a princely gift, and Janet was throwing the stones away. Have you any means of identifying the stones to me? You can see, with such a valuable gem, I could not think of letting it go out of my possession unless I knew you to be the rightful owner. I'll be frank with you, Mr. Vrooman. The stones do not belong to me, but I must see the stone you have. There are 19 yet for me to find. If this one you have matches the others, there were 24 in the original necklace. You are an agent, then, for some recovery company? No, I'm doing this on my own. The necklace was a gift, I think, although I'm not sure, to a young lady I know and think very much of. She wishes them back, then? No, I don't know. I can't tell you why. I want them back. I just wish to see your stone. Vrooman walked to the safe in the corner of his office, opening it after spinning the dial back and forth for several minutes. He brought out a small box and placed it in the front of Blair on the table. He opened it with a flourish. Blair reached for it eagerly, examining it, exclaiming softly to himself. The other man, however, put his hand over it, looking distrustfully at his visitor. Blair reached into his pocket and drew out an envelope. One by one, he took the 4 diamonds from their bed of cotton in which they had been placed to prevent scratching. The 5 diamonds were identical. Vrooman examined each one of Blair's 4 diamonds carefully. Yes, he said, at last, a touch of regret in his voice. They are the same. But you spoke about a reward? I shall give you $1,000 for the stone, but first I must be taken exactly to the place where you found it on the docks. It is more important to me to know where it was found than to get the stone back. I shall have to get my son. Vrooman reached for the phone, Blair waiting patiently for the boy to arrive. When he came, he proved to be about 10 years old, a bright little lad, the image of what his father must have been at his age. Sam, Jr., chatted importantly all the way to his wharves. Then, when they arrived, pointed out the exact spot where they had found the stone. At first, he had thought it was just a piece of glass, curiously cut, he said. The dock was a long one of the largest in Vancouver. Sam had found the stone clinging between two planks wedged in. Why someone else had not seen it first, he did not know, as it was easy to see, glinting in the sunlight. All the boy knew about it was that he had found it last Friday afternoon, and when his mother was cleaning his pockets that night, had found it and shown it to his father. Had Sam seen the girl with the light hair getting on the steamer? A girl with violet eyes, rather slight, with a pale face and red lips? He hadn't noticed. There was a lot of people down there on the docks that day. A big boat was leaving for Japan. His mother didn't want him to go down there, but he loved to go to the water, and his vacation time came often. Blair calculated quickly. Friday afternoon, Sam had found the diamond. Janet had left the Bowes Vane house early Thursday morning. Here it was Thursday again. The trail was cold, too cold by now, he feared. After he had all the information the boy could give, he made out a personal check to Vrooman's and received the fifth diamond. Father and son left the docks, and Blair wandered about alone. He inquired at all the offices whether a girl of Janet's description had been seen. She apparently had not. No one had sailed under the name of Janet Lord from any of these lines. Maurice Bosvane was equally unknown. 25 ships carrying passengers had left since last Friday, some for the coast route, a few for the Orient and Australia, and irregular daily boats to Seattle. Blair gave it up, finally, no wiser than when he had come, except for the possession of another diamond. Upon reaching the hotel, he phoned Bosvane, but there were no more answers there to his BR advertisements. He inquired at his own hotel for Miss Lord, but no one, apparently, had seen a girl answering her description. It seemed useless to him now to return to Bosvane. When he knew Janet had been in Vancouver, at least the diamond Sammy Vorman had found indicated the trail led there. This, he believed, was his only clue, and although a discouragingly slender one, he determined to follow it through. He made a personal survey of all of the automobile rental agencies. Janet had said in her note that she was going away in a car, that it was waiting even as she wrote to Nita. The car might possibly have come from Vancouver, but all efforts to trace the car ended in failure. It seemed incredible to him that the two had dropped so completely from sight, considering that Nita had said that Maurice, if he were to be seen, was so terrible anyone would remember him. Blair tried to picture him, but could not. Nita had not given him even a hint of the man's appearance. Time was passing so rapidly, yet he seemed to be getting nowhere. With each day that passed, Janet was getting further and further away from him, he felt. After visiting the car agencies, he drove aimlessly back to the hotel, wondering what he should do next. Hire a detective to manage the thing for him? That might be the best. After all, although he had leisure, he could handle the matter well enough himself, if only he could get some clue to work on. A maid was cleaning his room when he returned to the hotel. He dropped into an easy chair, more discouraged than exhausted. Funny things you find in a hotel room, the maid said, who proved to be a garrulous person, said suddenly. She was pounding up his pillow with their fresh slip-ons. Funny thing, once I found a pearl ring lying on the washbowl of the room on my floor, and nobody ever claimed it. Would you believe it? Then once last year, I found a sapphire bracelet under a pillow, but the woman came back after it. She gave me $5 for finding it, although finding things I am. Always finding things I am. They think I'm lucky. I got a lucky floor here, but I got good eyes. Funny, the things you find around a hotel. Yes, Blair said idly. The talkative woman annoyed him. He wanted to concentrate to think. And just this morning, I found a stone under the rug in the soot down in the hall. I was vacuuming, and my vacuum hit a bump. And when I lifted the corner of the rug, what do you think I found? Maybe it's a diamond? You ought to know, sir. The maid fished in her pocket and pulled out a glittering object and handed it to Blair. Blair glanced duly at it. He had not half heard what the woman said. He suddenly sat up with a start. "Where did you find this?" he demanded excitedly. The stone was exactly like the other ones he had already had. "Under the rug in 708 through 10, when I was vacuuming." "I told you, sir. I just been wondering whether it was a real diamond or just a bit of glass. Maybe you could tell me, sir. I've been looking for it. See, it just matches my others." He drew out his 5 others. "Well, now, ain't that queer? Well, if it's yours, you can have it." She handed him the diamond. "I'm offering a reward. I've been running ads in all papers. Here's $50 for your trouble." The maid's face was a mixture of joy and consideration. "Oh, sir, that's too much. And I ain't even reported it at the desk yet. Just found it this morning." "Take it, and say nothing about finding it. Now, I want to ask you some questions." Reluctantly, the woman sat down, holding the $50 bill tightly in her hands. "Can you take me to the room where you found this?" "A man and his wife have it now, sir." "When did they come?" "I don't know exactly, sir, but I think they've been here for several days. It was empty a few days before that." "Who occupied it before?" "I'm sure I don't know. Whoever did, I didn't want the soot I didn't want the soot touched, for I had orders from the housekeeper not to go in." "You're sure you didn't see the couple who were occupying that room? I mean, the ones before the couple now in there." "I didn't see him, sir." "All right, that's all I want to know." Blair hurried from the room to see the desk clerk. The present occupants of the suite were an elderly man and his wife from Winnipeg. They had been there for 3 days, but before that, the suite had been empty for several days. It had been occupied for 2 nights, last Thursday and Friday, by a lady, a Miss Marie Bordeaux from Seattle. What did the girl look like? The clerk remembered nothing about her except that she had been heavily veiled when she registered. She had asked that the suite be undisturbed. He could give no description of her. She had come in at midnight, had a lot of baggage. He remembered it had been unloaded, so the porter who brought in the grips had told him. From a large automobile, all her meals had been sent up to her suite. She had not settled her bill at the desk, if he remembered rightly. He thought she had asked for a boy to bring the statement to her and sent the money down with him. "Could I talk to the boy?" Rodman asked. "Certainly, sir." We'll let the clock go, but I don't think we'll finish tonight. Yes, the boy recalled Miss Bordeaux. She was a pretty lady with golden hair and deep blue eyes, very young and very sad. He thought. She had tipped him more generously, but even if she hadn't, he would have done anything for her willingly. She was so sweet and so kind. Once, when he had taken some ice water to her room, he thought he heard a man's voice talking to her before he knocked at the door. He supposed she had visitors, but when he had entered, she was alone, and seemed sadder and more forlorn than ever. The boy thought she must be sick or something, but she must have a lot of money, as she tipped well and had a suite of 3 rooms, 2 bedrooms, a living room, and 2 baths. She usually was wearing a negligee when he went to the room, one of those trailing chiffon things. "Did she leave Friday morning?" Rodman asked. "Why, yes, I believe she did, only it was about noon. She went out for about an hour or so. She had a large leather box carried down and placed in a taxi. She brought it back with her, too. I noticed." "Then what?" "She called for me shortly after she returned, asked me to bring up some aspirin, as she had a headache. Saturday morning, she had called him to bring up her bill, which she had done. She was ready to go with all her baggage packed when he arrived, and she gave him a large bill, telling him to keep the change. She went into a big limousine," the boy said. "He and the porter had carried the luggage out and placed it in the car. He thought she had told the driver to go to the docks. Blair was certain that Miss Bordeaux must be Janet. She could be no one else. But what had become of Maurice? The boy had heard the man's voice in the room once, but when he entered, there was no one. About her meals. Did she have meals for two sent up? He asked the boy. I don't know, sir. You will have to ask the waiters who carried the things to her room. Blair sought out the dining room captain and found Miss Bordeaux's meal checks for a woman who seemed ill and frail. She ordered a good deal, easily enough for two persons. He decided, after more inquiry, he found the waiter who had taken up the meals. No one was there, just the lady in the room, the parlor where she served her meals. His description tallied with that of the bellboy. When he had obtained all this information, Blair went up to his room to think things out. He had scarcely entered the room when there was a timid knock at the door. Frowning, he called, "Come in." "Just me, sir." The chambermaid put her head in the door and then entered slowly. "Sorry to bother you, sir, but there's something I forgot. I thought you might like to know, seeing as you're interested in 708-10. What is it?" "When I went to clean before these people were what they are now, I had to wash off the mirrors with kerosene. Yes, I did. They was all painted over with something, and you couldn't tell what you was looking at. You was looking at them, except you couldn't see yourself in them, no matter how you looked. There was lots of mirrors in the soot, and they was all painted over. Even the hand mirror on the dressing table." If Blair had been doubtful that Maurice was with Janet, he was positive now. Was he so awful? Did he even hate his own reflection in the mirror? Let's see how much more time we have here, my dears. We are at 2:63. Oh yes, we don't have time this evening. Let's see. I might have to keep you updated because I may be out of town next Friday. If I am, I will be reading on Thursday instead. But we will see what we can do there. Let me look and see what we have going on in all of the comments. Boy, the book is getting good, isn't it? I really liked it. Ash Duran, hello. The stories really hit the spot. Time for bed. Good night, everyone. Gracious good evening. Sorry I'm late. Good evening. Aaron Terrace, hello. That's okay. Welcome. Lauren Morgan Richards, hello. Thomas Johnson, Wolfbane, hello. Good evening, my lovelies. So to keep you updated as to what I'm doing, the 2nd of next month, I will be in Atlanta for the burlesque. I'm sorry, we changed the name, so I have to remember. I can't remember. I'll be there for the Debauchery Burlesque Ball Atlanta, 2nd of next month, and then I will be in Ohio coming up the end of October. So also don't forget to find me on Patreon, and if you want something for your support, if you go on to mysterycontrol.com, you can find pillows with my face on it. We were working on some other things. We're working on teacups, and we're getting a lot of things. And also, don't forget to watch on Wednesday nights when we do Witches Movie Coven. All right, my lovelies, I'm going to go to bed. My voice is starting to go. Much love. Until next time, good night.